Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You ever just end up buying something you totally didn't plan on?
Oh, all the time. Like, way more often than I'd like to admit.
Okay, phew. So it's not just me. It's like sometimes that add to cart button has a mind of its own.
Seriously, it's like a magnetic force sometimes, especially when you're just browsing online and killing time. Suddenly, you're the proud owner of a pineapple core you'll probably use once.
You know what's really bad for me? Kitchen gadgets, 100%.
Oh, I feel that. Kitchen gadgets are a weakness. And shoes. Definitely
Yeah,
shoes.
shoes are dangerous territory, like those limited edition sneakers.
Ugh, don't even get me started on limited editions. It's like marketing magic, but for your wallet.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then there are those grocery store trips where you go in for milk and bread, and somehow you leave with a bunch of stuff you never even considered.
Oh, tell me about it. Like a scented candle that smells like, well, I don't even know what it smells like, but it smelled good in the store. And a magazine, one of those glossy ones with the beautiful pictures. And chocolate. Always got to have chocolate.
Chocolate is a must, especially when it's calling your name from the checkout aisle. But honestly, this whole impulse buying thing, it's more common than you might think.
More than we might think. It's like the norm, practically. You've got, what is it, something like 84% of shoppers admitting to impulse buys?
Yeah, that's the stat. 84% of us have caved at some point.
Yeah.
But here's the really mind-blowing part. Get this. In some markets, almost half of all purchases are unplanned.
Half. Well, that's a lot of unplanned spending. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Like, it's not just a little quirk. It's a huge part of how we shop and spend.
So in today's deep dive, we're going to unpack all of this. Figure out why we do it, how marketing plays us, and what you can do to take back control.
It's easy to beat ourselves up over this. Like, ugh, I have no willpower. But the truth is, there's a whole lot more going on in our brains when we make these split-second decisions.
It's like that little voice of reason just takes a nap right when you need it most.
That's like it goes on vacation.
Yeah.
And our brain's reward system swoops in to take over. Think about it. You see something that catches your eye. Could be anything, a pair of shoes, a gadget, a yummy-looking dessert, and boom, your brain releases dopamine.
Dopamine, that's the feel-good chemical, right?
Exactly. It's linked to pleasure and reward. So even the anticipation of buying something can trigger a little surge of dopamine, making us feel good even before we've actually bought anything.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I know for me, sometimes just picturing myself using a new gadget or wearing a new outfit, it's enough to get that little rush.
And that feeling can be even more intense if you're already feeling, say, a bit down or stressed, because let's face it, sometimes shopping can feel like a quick fix for a bad day.
Oh, yeah, totally. When I'm bored or stressed or lonely even, online shopping is like my go-to. It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle.
It's like a temporary escape, right? You get that dopamine hit, you feel a little bit better, even if it's just for a moment. But those emotional triggers are something to watch out for. They can really make us more susceptible to those impulse buys.
Okay, so we've got dopamine, we've got emotions playing a role.
Sure.
But what about all those tricky marketing tactics they use, like the whole limited edition thing?
Yeah.
That gets me every time.
Oh, the limited edition trap. It's a classic example of the scarcity effect, and it's super powerful. Our brains are wired to avoid missing out, so when we see something presented as rare or exclusive, we immediately want it more.
It's like FOMO on steroids. Like, if I don't buy this now, I'll regret it forever.
Exactly. It's that fear of missing out that makes us act impulsively, even if we wouldn't normally be interested in the item if it wasn't presented that way.
And then there's that whole pricing game they play. You see something marked down from like an insane price to something that seems more reasonable.
Ah, yes, the classic sale. But what's really happening there is something called anchoring. That higher original price acts as an anchor point in our minds, making the sale price seem way more attractive than it might actually be.
So even if that sale price is still, outside of my budget, it feels like a steal because it's so much lower than that initial price.
Exactly. It's a clever way to make us feel like we're getting a bargain, even if we're still spending more than we intended.
And then, of course, there's the whole social influence thing, like seeing those influencers you follow rave about a product or getting targeted ads for things you've been browsing online. It's hard to resist, right?
Social influence is incredibly powerful. We're social creatures, so we naturally look to others for cues about what's cool, what's trendy, what's worth buying. Seeing others endorse a product, especially people we admire or trust, can make us want it too, even if we don't really need it.
It's like that feeling of, well, if they have it, I should have it too.
And then those personalized ads, they're like ninjas. They know what you've been looking at online, and they pop up everywhere to remind you. It's hard to escape.
They're good at their job, that's for sure. So basically, our brains are primed for this, and marketers know exactly how to push those buttons. Let's talk about some of those specific tactics. You mentioned color psychology earlier, like how red is supposed to create urgency.
Yeah, think about all those sale signs. They're almost always red. It's a color that grabs your attention and signals you to act fast. Blue, on the other hand, is associated with trust and reliability. It's often used by brands that want to project an image of stability and security.
And what about orange?
Orange is often associated with action and enthusiasm. It's a color that can encourage you to take a chance to try something new. You'll often see it used for call to action buttons like buy now or sign up.
It's amazing how much thought goes into all of this. It's like they're manipulating our subconscious almost.
It's definitely strategic. Every element of marketing, from the colors used to the way products are displayed, is designed to influence our emotions and behavior.
And don't even get me started on those countdown timers. You know, the ones that are like, this deal ends in 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's instant pressure.
Oh, yeah, the countdown timer. It's a brilliant way to create artificial scarcity and trigger FOMO. It makes you feel like you have to make a decision right now before you miss out on a great opportunity.
Even if you weren't even thinking about buying that thing 5 minutes ago, it's crazy how effective it is.
It's all about tapping into that sense of urgency. And then, of course, we've got personalized ads, which are getting more and more sophisticated by the day.
It's almost creepy sometimes how they know exactly what you're interested in. But it's hard to deny that it works. Like if you're seeing ads for things that actually appeal to you, you're more likely to click and, potentially make a purchase.
It's all about data. Marketers can now track your browsing history, your search queries, even your social media activity to create a profile of your interests and preferences. And then they use that information to deliver ads that are tailored specifically to you. It's incredibly effective.
And then there's the whole upselling and cross-selling thing. Like when you buy a phone and suddenly they're trying to sell you a case, a screen protector, wireless earbuds.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. It's all about suggestion. They're planting the seed in your mind that you need all these extra things to complete your purchase.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works. You start thinking, well, I did just spend a lot of money on this phone. Might as well protect my investment.
And then there are those frequently bought together suggestions, which basically tell you what everyone else is buying, so you should too.
It's like a virtual peer pressure. They're using social proof to influence your decisions. If other people are buying these items together, they must be good, right? It's a very effective tactic.
So we've talked about how our brains are wired for this and all the sneaky marketing tactics that are out there.
Yeah.
But what about the other side of the coin? Like the emotional consequences of all this impulse buying?
That's an important aspect that often gets overlooked. While impulse buying can give you that temporary high, that rush of dopamine, it often leads to some not-so-great feelings afterwards, like buyer's remorse.
Buyer's remorse is the worst. It's like the sinking feeling of regret, like, why did I even buy that?
It can really take the joy out of shopping, and it can lead to feelings of guilt, especially if you've overspent or bought something you can't really afford.
And if it becomes a habit, it can lead to even bigger problems.
Yeah.
Like debt.
Exactly. When impulse buying becomes a way of coping with stress or negative emotions, it can spiral into a cycle of spending and guilt that's really hard to break.
And for people who are trying to be more mindful about their spending, maybe even embracing a more minimalist lifestyle, impulse buying can be a real obstacle.
It definitely goes against the principles of minimalism. Instead of focusing on what you truly need and value, you end up with a bunch of stuff that clutters your home and your life.
It's like physical and mental clutter. Not a good combo. So the big question is, what can we do about it? How do we fight back against those impulses and make more mindful choices?
There are a lot of great strategies you can try. One of the simplest and most effective is the wait 24 hours rule.
Oh, I've heard of that. So if you're about to buy something on impulse, you just wait a day before you actually go through with it.
Exactly. Just give yourself some time to cool off and really think about whether you need or even want the item. You might be surprised how often that initial urge fades away.
It's like taking a step back and letting the rational part of your brain catch up. What else can you do?
Well, it can be really helpful to figure out your personal triggers. What situations or emotions make you more likely to impulse buy? Is it stress, boredom, loneliness, seeing certain types of ads?
So if you know your weaknesses, you can be more prepared.
Exactly. Once you're aware of your triggers, you can either avoid those situations or develop strategies for coping with them in a healthier way.
Okay, that makes sense. What about all those marketing messages that are constantly bombarding us? It feels impossible to escape.
Well, you can start by unsubscribing from all those tempting email newsletters and unfollowing those influencers who are constantly promoting stuff you don't need. It's a simple step, but it can make a big difference.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. Reduce your exposure to those triggers and you're less likely to be tempted.
And what about budgeting? Should people be thinking about budgeting differently to help with impulse buying?
Absolutely. One helpful strategy is to actually include a specific amount in your budget for fun spending or discretionary purchases. Knowing that you have a designated amount for those non-essential items can help you feel less guilty about indulging occasionally, while also preventing you from overspending.
It's like giving yourself permission to spend on fun stuff, but within limits. I like that. What about the wish list strategy? I've heard that can be helpful.
The wish list strategy is all about delaying gratification. If you're tempted to buy something, add it to your wish list and wait, say, a week or a month before you actually buy it.
So you give yourself some time to really consider if it's something you truly want.
Right. You might find that the initial urge fades away, or you realize you don't really need or even want the item anymore.
What about how you actually pay for things? Does that make a difference?
Research suggests that using cash or debit cards can help you be more mindful of your spending. There's something about physically seeing the money leave your hand that makes you think twice before spending it.
It's more tangible, like you're actually seeing your money disappear rather than just swiping a card and forgetting about it.
Exactly. And when you're more mindful of your spending, you're less likely to make impulsive decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there any mindset shifts that can help with this?
Cultivating gratitude for the things you already have can be a powerful antidote to impulse buying. When you appreciate what you have, you're less likely to feel that need to constantly acquire more.
It's about focusing on what you already have rather than what you're lacking. And it's so true when you start feeling grateful for all the good things in your life. It's easier to resist those tempting purchases.
And of course, there's the classic question, do I need this or do I just want it?
It's a good question to ask, but sometimes it's hard to answer honestly in the heat of the moment.
It's about taking a pause and really examining your motivations. Is this item going to add genuine value to your life, or is it just a temporary fix for a deeper need?
And I found that sometimes just decluttering my space can be a wake-up call, like seeing all the stuff I already have that I don't even use.
Decluttering can be a great way to become more aware of your consumption patterns. It's a visual reminder of all the things you've bought in the past that you didn't really need, and it can help you make more mindful choices in the future.
It's like, do I really want to add more to this pile? And finally, you mentioned asking yourself some mindful shopping questions. What are some examples of those?
Things like, will I still want this a month from now? Or is this something that aligns with my values? Or am I buying this to make myself feel better about something else? These are all questions that can help you get to the root of your desire and make a more conscious decision.
I love that. It's about slowing down and really thinking things through.
Exactly. It's about shifting from autopilot to mindful decision-making.
So it sounds like impulse buying is something that we all struggle with to some degree. It's a combination of how our brains are wired, our emotions, and some pretty clever marketing tactics.
It's part of the human experience. But the good news is that we can learn to manage those impulses and make choices that are more aligned with our values and goals.
It's not about being perfect. It's about being more aware and making more intentional decisions.
Exactly. It's about enjoying the shopping experience, but not letting it control you.
So next time you feel that urge to buy something you hadn't planned on, take a deep breath, remember this conversation, and ask yourself, do I really need this?
It's a powerful question, and it can make all the difference.
That's great advice. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into impulse buying. Hopefully you learned some helpful tips and tricks for navigating the world of shopping more mindfully.
It was my pleasure. And remember, you've got this.
That's right. Until next time, happy mindful shopping.